I have to be honest with you, when you sent over the reading list for this deep dive, I thought you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting the usual suspects, maybe a biography of a tech mogul, a breakdown of modern agile management, something from, the Harvard Business Review.
And instead, you got a stack of translations from the 14th century.
Exactly. I'm looking at this title, Nihayat ala Vai Funun al-Adab, which translates to The Ultimate Ambition in the Arts of Erudition.
It's a mouthful.
It sounds less like a management handbook and more like something Indiana Jones would be trying to steal from a temple.
It does have that vibe, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But this is actually one of the most comprehensive encyclopedias ever written. It was compiled by a man named Shihab al-Nuwayri in Cairo, right around the 1320s.
Okay.
And what we're looking at today, specifically Volume 6, is what's known as a mirror for princes.
Mirror for princes. That's a genre, right? I've heard that term.
It is. It's essentially a literary genre that serves as an instruction manual for kings, sultans, and caliphs.
Right.
But if you strip away the royal titles and the references to, swords and horses, what you left with is a C-suite executive handbook for running a high-stakes organization in a volatile market.
That is exactly what struck me. We are going to talk about hiring, firing, market confidence, leadership psychology. It's all in there.
It's all there.
But before we get into the how-to, I think we need to set the scene a little bit. Because the person writing this and the people he was writing for, they weren't your typical monarchs. We're talking about the Mamluk era.
This is a crucial piece of context. The Mamluks were unique in history. The word Mamluk literally means owned or slave.
Owned. Wow.
These were rulers who started their lives as slave soldiers, usually imported from the Turkic steppes or the Caucasus.
Yeah.
They were purchased as boys, trained in the absolute elite arts of war and governance, and then manumitted free to serve the state.
And eventually they overthrew their masters.
And became the masters themselves.
Which is wild. You have a dynasty of kings who have no royal blood. They are, by definition, self-made men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that creates a massive chip on the shoulder of the entire political system. I mean, if you aren't the son of the king by blood right, how do you justify your rule?
Right. How do you?
You justify it through competence, through merit. So this manual we're diving into isn't just how to be a king. It's how to survive when your only claim to power is that you are better at the job than anyone else.
That raises the stakes immensely. So let's jump into the first major section of our analysis. I'm calling this the resume of the perfect ruler.
The job description.
Yes. Al-Nuwayri lays out the prerequisites. If you were posting a job listing for Sultan on LinkedIn in 1320 Cairo, what are the requirements?
Well, the text immediately grapples with that tension we just mentioned, lineage versus capability.
Okay.
The traditional view, going back centuries in Islamic political thought, was that the imam, or the caliph, had to be from the tribe of Quraysh, the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad.
A bloodline requirement.
It was. But the Mamluks, they aren't Quraysh.
Right. They're from the Eurasian steppe.
Precisely. So al-Nuwayri, navigating this delicate political reality, he acknowledges the tradition of lineage, but then he pivots hard to the practical traits.
Okay, so what does he pivot to?
He says, effectively, blood is nice, but if you want the state to function, you need two things, adala and ilm, justice and knowledge.
Let's unpack knowledge first, because he's not saying the king needs to be a professor, right? He's not asking for a PhD.
Oh, no, it's not academic knowledge for the sake of trivia. It's functional literacy of the world. Think about it. A leader is essentially a decision-making engine. Information comes in, decisions go out. If the leader is ignorant, if they don't know the law, if they don't know history, if they don't understand the geography of their neighbors, they cannot process that information independently.
They become dependent on their staff.
Worse, they become a puppet. If I'm an ignorant king and my advisor tells me, "Sire, the peasants in the north are rebelling, we must send the army," I have to believe him.
You have no way to check.
No way to verify. Ilm gives the leader the ability to audit their own organization. It's the difference between a CEO who understands the code base and one who just nods when the CTO speaks.
That makes perfect sense. You need enough knowledge to call bluff.
Yes.
And then the second pillar is justice, or adala. But the text pairs this with something very visceral, courage.
You cannot have justice without courage. That is the Mamluk reality. You can be the fairest person in the world, but if you are a coward, you cannot enforce that fairness.
Right.
The king is the ultimate defense of the realm. If the Mongols are at the gates, and in this time period that was a very real threat,
A constant threat.
and a king is hiding under the table, the social contract just dissolves.
So the resume is smart enough to audit your team, just enough to be trusted, and brave enough to fight.
That's the foundation.
But what I found even more compelling were the anti-traits, the red flag.
The disqualifiers.
Yes.
The text quotes Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, the founder of the Umayyad Caliphate. He was known as a master politician, very pragmatic, very shrewd, a fascinating figure.
And he lists 5 traits that, if a leader has them, basically guarantee the state will fail.
And this list is devastating because it is so psychological. It's not about bad strategy. It's about character flaws that destroy the machinery of leadership.
Let's go through them one by one, because I think everyone listening is going to recognize a boss they've had in these descriptions.
It deserves it.
The first one is lying.
If a leader lies, no promise can be trusted. It sounds like a Sunday school lesson, but think about the mechanics of power. Leadership is fundamentally a transaction of trust.
Okay.
I give you my loyalty, my labor, maybe even my life, based on a promise of a future outcome. Work hard and you'll get a bonus. Fight for me and I'll protect your family.
If you lie, you break the feedback loop.
You destroy the currency of the realm, not the gold coins, but the word of the state. If I can't predict your reaction because you are dishonest, I stop investing in our relationship.
You just go into self-preservation mode.
Exactly. A lying CEO creates a company of mercenaries who are just trying to loot the building before it burns down.
Wow. Which leads perfectly to the second red flag. Miserliness. Stinginess.
This was a cardinal sin in the Mamluk world. The Sultan's power was built on patronage. You had to feed the army, reward the poets, build the mosques, and host the feasts.
But isn't being frugal good? We hear about CEOs who fly economy class and save money.
There's a huge difference between frugality and miserliness. Frugality is not wasting resources. Miserliness is withholding what is due. The text says, if they are stingy, people won't advise them or work for them. Think about that mechanism. If I know you're going to hoard the credit and the rewards, why would I bring you my best idea?
I wouldn't. I'd keep it for myself, or I'd take it to a competitor.
Precisely. A stingy leader creates an information vacuum. Advisors stop advising because there is no return on investment for their loyalty. The miserly king ends up alone, sitting on a pile of gold that nobody will help him defend.
The third one hit close to home for anyone who has worked in a high-stress office. Sharpness or constant anger.
The term implies volatility. A leader who is sharp or ill-tempered.
Why is this a disqualifier? I mean, some people think an angry boss is a strong boss. You know, the table-slamming type.
It's a disaster for intelligence gathering. It's that simple. If I am afraid that you are going to scream at me or fire me or belittle me when I bring you bad news, what do?
You stop bringing bad news.
I stop bringing you bad news. I filter everything. I tell you what you want to hear to avoid the explosion.
So the angry leader creates a reality distortion field around themselves. They think everything is fine because everyone is too scared to tell them the building is on fire.
That's it, exactly. And by the time the fire reaches the corner office, it's too late to put it out. Anger blinds the leader to reality.
Number 4 is envy. And this one seemed weird to me initially. Why would a king be envious? He's a king. He has everything.
It's the small man syndrome. It happens when a leader is insecure. They shouldn't be jealous of their subjects, but you see it all the time.
Like what?
A manager who is jealous of a subordinate who is more popular with the team. A CEO who is jealous of a founder who gets more press.
So they sabotage their own people.
Yes. Muawiyah's point is that a leader should see the success of their people as their own success. If you are envious, you will cap the growth of your own organization just to make sure no one outshines you.
You will cut down the tall poppies in your own garden.
Exactly.
And finally, number 5, cowardice.
Which brings us right back to the prerequisite. If you are afraid of the enemy, you cannot lead the defense. But it's also moral cowardice.
What do you mean by that?
The fear of making a hard decision, the fear of taking responsibility. If the team sees the leader panic, the panic spreads like a virus.
So if you're a liar, cheap, angry, jealous, or a chicken, don't apply for the job.
In al-Nuwayri's view, you are already fired. The state just hasn't collapsed yet.
Now, there's a nuance here I want to push on. We want a leader who isn't angry, who is approachable.
Right.
But the text also has the section on joking, Maza, and it basically says, don't be the class clown.
This is the concept of awe, dignity, or gravitas. It's a very difficult balance to strike.
Yeah.
The text isn't saying you have to be a statue,
Mm-hmm.
but it warns that excessive familiarity breeds contempt.
There's a specific anecdote about a king who joked too much. Can you tell that story?
Right. So he was a prankster. He loved to laugh. He loved to be one of the guys. He thought it built rapport. He thought my people love me because I'm fun.
The cool boss trap.
The cool boss trap, exactly. But then a crisis happened. He needed to give a stern life or death order. And nobody moved.
They didn't take him seriously.
They couldn't. They had seen him acting the fool so many times that they couldn't see him as the commander.
That is a harsh lesson. You can be friendly, but you can't be a buddy.
There has to be a distance, a reserve. If you are laughing at everyone's jokes and playing pranks, you lose the moral authority to judge when things go wrong.
So that about...
It's the resource you draw upon when you need to make a hard call. If you spend it all on cheap laughs, the account is empty when you need it.
Okay, let's pivot. We've hired our king. He's brave, he's smart, he's serious, but not angry. Now we need to look at how he actually runs the economy. This is section 2, the ecology of justice.
This is, in my opinion, the most profound part of the entire text. It uses a metaphor. The world is a garden.
Okay.
The king is the wall surrounding the garden. And the thing that keeps the wall standing is justice.
It's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
But al-Nuwayri takes it from poetry to something that sounds like behavioral economics.
He does.
He argues that the leader's internal mood, specifically their intention towards justice or greed, physically changes the output of the land.
It sounds like superstition, doesn't it? The king is sad, so the crops fail. But when you read the example he gives, the famous story of the cow, it reveals a very sophisticated understanding of market confidence.
Set the scene for us.
Okay, so this story is attributed to the time of Kisra, or Khusra, the Persian emperor. He's traveling through his lands, inspecting the territory. He stops at a farm and sees a cow being milked. And this cow it's a biological miracle. It's producing buckets and buckets of milk, just an insane yield.
The king sees this, and instead of thinking, wow, what a great asset for the community, his brain goes to revenue.
The tax brain activates. He doesn't say anything out loud. He just thinks to himself, if I taxed this specific farm more, if I changed the tax code to target this cow, imagine how much money I would have.
Greed enters his heart.
He decides internally to squeeze the asset.
And then the magic happens.
The milk dries up
Yeah.
immediately. And the next time they milk the cow, there's nothing, or the yield crashes completely.
The king is confused. He asks the farmer, what happened? Did the cow get sick?
And the farmer, who represents the wisdom of the common people, says something incredible.
What does he say?
He says, the intention of the king changed. Injustice entered his heart. And when the king's intention turns to injustice, the blessings, baraka, of the earth vanish.
Okay, stop there. Because a modern listener hears that and thinks, that's a fairy tale. A king thinks a thought and a cow stops making milk. That's telepathy.
It is a fairy tale mechanism, but it's an economic reality. Let's decode it. The king's intention isn't telepathy. It's policy signaling.
Oh.
It's reputation.
So when the king starts looking at the farm with greedy eyes, the farmer notices. The people around him notice.
Exactly. The farmer senses the predation. He senses that the rules are about to change. He senses that his property rights are no longer secure.
Right.
And if you think the government, the wall, is about to collapse on you and take your wealth, what is your rational economic response?
You stop investing, you hide the wealth, you maybe even kill the cow and sell the meat to get the value out now before it's stolen.
That is the milk drying up. It's capital flight. It's a shrinkage in production caused by a lack of confidence in the regulatory environment.
So when the owner says the blessings vanished, he's describing a loss of market confidence.
That's precisely what he's describing.
That is mind-blowing. Justice is infrastructure. We usually think of infrastructure as roads and bridges, but al-Nuwayri is saying, no, your fairness is a bridge. Your integrity is a road.
And if that collapses, commerce stops.
And what's the end of the story?
Notice the resolution. The king realizes his mistake. He repents. He changes his mind and decides to be just. And the milk returns.
Confidence is restored.
Baraka, or blessing in this context, looks a lot like sustainable growth. It's the surplus that comes when people feel safe enough to plant trees they won't harvest for 20 years.
Wow.
You cannot force a cow to give milk, and you cannot force an economy to grow. You can only create the conditions of justice where growth is possible.
So the leader's job isn't to make money. It's to make safety.
And the money follows the safety. But the king can't do this alone. He needs a team.
Which brings us to Section 3, the HR department.
Or the viziers, the governors, and the scribes.
Yes. The text leans heavily on a specific document here, which I know you were excited about. The letter to Malik al-Ashtar.
This is the Magna Carta of Islamic governance. It's a letter written by Ali ibn Abi Talib, the fourth caliph, to Malik al-Ashtar when he appointed him governor of Egypt.
And al-Nuwayri just pastes huge chunks of it into his book.
Because he considers it the gold standard. It's the absolute peak of this kind of advice.
There is a line in there that absolutely floored me. Ali is telling Malik how to treat his subjects. And remember, this is the 7th century. And he says, people are of two kinds. Either your brother in religion or your equal in creation.
Your equal in creation. Naziruka fi al-khalq. It is a stunning statement of universal humanism.
I mean,
he is explicitly telling the governor, you are not just the governor of the Muslims, you are the governor of the human beings.
Yeah.
Their rights do not stem from their faith, they stem from their existence.
That feels incredibly modern. I mean, we're still arguing about inclusion today, and here is a text from the 600s laying it out.
He follows it up with a warning against the wolf mentality. He says, do not act like a predator toward your citizens, thinking their consumption is your prize.
That connects right back to the cow story.
It does. It's the same principle. The governor cannot view the citizens as prey. You are not a wolf eating sheep. You are a shepherd protecting them.
So it's a total shift in mindset.
The shift in mindset is total. If you view your employees or your citizens as resources to be extracted, you are a predator. If you view them as a responsibility to be stewarded, you are a leader.
So how do you pick the people to help you do this? The viziers. The text has some very specific and honestly somewhat controversial advice on hiring.
Oh, yes. The most famous rule is the no yes men policy.
Right.
The best minister is the one who tells you the bitter truth, the one who makes you uncomfortable.
Which is easy to say, but so hard to do. It feels good to be agreed with.
That's why it's a discipline. But the controversial part you mentioned is the background check policy regarding former regimes.
Right. The text says, do not hire a minister who previously served a tyrant and helped them in their sins.
They carry moral baggage. That's the idea.
But let me play devil's advocate here. Suppose I'm a new just king. I've just taken over. There's a guy who worked for the previous evil king.
Okay.
He knows where the files are. He knows how the tax system works. He's efficient. Why wouldn't I hire him? He has the experience.
That is the pragmatic argument. But al-Nuwayri, quoting Ali, argues that the efficiency isn't worth the pollution. This person has normalized corruption. They have learned to navigate a system of injustice. If they helped a tyrant commit sins, they have a broken moral compass.
So you can't retrain them.
The risk is that they will retrain you. They will bring the bad habits, the shortcuts, and the predatory tactics into your clean administration.
So you're saying it's better to hire someone inexperienced but righteous and train them?
Yes, than to hire someone experienced but corrupt. It's an argument for culture fit over skill fit.
That is a bold HR strategy. It's saying that moral integrity is a hard skill, not a soft skill.
It's the hardest skill. And once you have these trusted advisors, the text pivots to how you handle information. The concept of kitman al-sir, keeping secrets.
This part felt a little paranoid to me. Trust no one. Keep your goals hidden.
It's not paranoia, it's statecraft. The text advises that while your values like justice should be transparent, your tactics and strategies should be opaque.
What's the logic there?
If you want something done, keep the ultimate goal hidden until the moment of execution.
Give me a modern example.
Think about a negotiation or a merger. If you announce to the world, I absolutely must buy company X at any price, what happens?
The price goes up, or a competitor jumps in to block you.
Exactly. Or within your own team, if you announce, I am thinking of firing the VP of marketing, the politicking starts immediately. People take sides. The work stops.
Okay, I get it.
A leader preserves their optionality by keeping their counsel. You don't show your hand until you are ready to play the card.
So, be loud about your principles, but quiet about your moves.
That's a great way to summarize it.
There's one last group the HR department needs to worry about. The text calls them the lowest class.
Yes. The poor, the disabled, the people who cannot speak for themselves.
This is the ultimate test of the equal in creation concept, isn't it?
It is. The ruler is personally responsible for those who cannot reach him.
It says the ruler must set aside his ego and listen to them directly. This is the undercover boss moment.
It is. The fear is that the viziers, your middle management, will filter the data. They will tell you, sire, the people are happy, the harvest is good.
Because they want to look competent.
Of course. The king must have a mechanism to bypass his own bureaucracy and check the reality on the ground.
Because if the vulnerable are being crushed and the king doesn't know,
The king is still responsible. Ignorance is not an excuse. Remember the first prerequisite, ilm, knowledge. You are responsible for knowing what is happening in the darkest corners of your kingdom.
heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Indeed. It is a burden, not a prize.
We've got the resume, the cow, and the team. Now we need to act. Section 4 is about strategy and resolve. Hazm and azm.
These are two rhyming Arabic words that carry a lot of weight. Hazm translates to firmness, prudence, or resolve. It comes from a root word meaning to bind or to tie up.
The text contrasts this with tawani, procrastination or slackness. There's a poetic line I highlighted. Opportunity passes like clouds.
It's so visual. You look up, the cloud is there. You look down to tie your shoe, you look up, the cloud is gone. The shape of the sky has changed.
In war, that's obvious. If you don't attack the flank when it's open, the gap closes. But how does this apply to management? Because earlier we said don't be rash, we said don't be angry. Now we're saying be fast. Isn't that a contradiction?
This is the crucial distinction between hazm, resolve, and rashness. Rashness is acting without thinking, usually driven by emotion.
Okay.
Hazm is thinking, concluding, and then acting immediately. It's the absence of analysis paralysis.
So the rash leader tweets at 3 a.m. because they are mad.
Right.
The resolute leader sees a shift in the market, analyzes the data, and pivots the whole company by Monday morning.
Exactly. The text warns that time itself is an enemy. If you leave a problem unsolved, it grows. If you leave a grievance unaddressed, it becomes a rebellion.
So hazm is the discipline of closing loops.
It is the act of binding the decision so it cannot come undone.
Binding the decision. I like that. It's about commitment.
And azm is the determination to see it through. Once you have tied the knot, hazm, you pull it tight, azm.
So al-Nuwayri is basically telling us, do your homework, build your moral foundation, treat your people like human beings, but when it's time to move, move like lightning.
That is the ultimate ambition.
We have covered a lot of ground. We've journeyed through the 14th century, met the ghost of Muawiyah, and learned why you shouldn't tax a magic cow.
A busy day.
As we wrap this up, what does this all mean for the listener?
I think we need to look at the definition of the perfect leader al-Nuwayri has constructed. It's a mix of a stern father, a generous host, and a sharp strategist.
It's a very high bar.
It is, but the principles are scalable. Whether you are running a Fortune 500 company, a small team, or just managing your own family, the king's resume applies.
So don't lie.
Don't lie.
Don't be stingy.
Don't be stingy. Don't let your moods dictate your policy.
And most importantly,
have the courage to listen to the person who tells you what you don't want to hear.
That no yes men rule really sticks with me. It's the safety valve for the whole system.
It is. But I want to leave the listener with that thought about the cow, the ecology of justice.
Yeah. We live in such a data-driven world. We obsess over mechanics, interest rates, conversion funnels, KPIs.
Right.
But al-Nuwayri is suggesting something almost spiritual about economics.
He's asking a provocative question. Have we underestimated the tangible economic impact of simply having a leader with a good heart?
A good heart. It sounds soft.
It sounds soft, but the text argues it is the hardest variable of all. Does the milk dry up in our companies simply because the workforce senses that the CEO is greedy? Does innovation stall because people don't trust the wall to protect them?
That is a thought to chew on. Maybe the best growth hack isn't a new algorithm.
What if it's not?
Maybe it's just not being a jerk.
It's a 700-year-old strategy, but looking around at the world today, it might be exactly what we need.
I'm going to go check on my team and maybe buy them lunch. Generosity.
Baraka, my friend. Baraka.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time. Okay, so if I mentioned Tourette Syndrome, chances are you picture something pretty specific, right? Often something quite sensationalized.
Yeah, usually from movies or TV.
Exactly. So today, we're doing a deep dive into TS. We want to get past those stereotypes and understand the clinical reality.
What it actually is, how people experience it day to day.
And crucially, what really works when it comes to managing it.
And we absolutely have to start with that big stereotype. Because honestly, public understanding is almost entirely shaped by a symptom that's, well, it's actually quite rare.
Let's just name it. People hear TS, they think uncontrollable swearing, shouting obscenities. That's called coprolalia. But let's be clear right up front. Tourette syndrome is a neurodevelopmental disorder. It's defined by having multiple motor tics and at least one vocal tic, usually starting in childhood. Coprolalia is not a requirement.
Not at all. And that symptom, the one everyone knows, it only affects a really small fraction of people diagnosed. We're talking maybe 1 in 10 people with TS.
1 in 10. That means for the other 9.
Right. For 90% of people living with Tourette's, that defining feature in the media just isn't part of their experience.
That's a huge disconnect. We've let a 10% thing define the whole condition.
And it matters because TS isn't actually that rare. Estimates suggest maybe up to 1% of school kids could have it.
1%. So it's actually quite common, but maybe underdiagnosed. And it's a spectrum.
Definitely a spectrum.
Yeah.
And to understand the actual experience for most people, we need to look at the core, the parasics themselves.
Okay, let's dig into that. So plaics. They're usually described as sudden, repetitive movements or sounds, right? Not rhythmic.
Correct. And a key thing is they wax and wane.
Meaning they change.
Yeah, they change all the time. Number of torics, how often they happen, how severe they feel, even where they show up in the body. It's very fluid.
And we need to move past the dramatic stuff here. For many, plaics are, well, subtle.
Very subtle.
Yeah.
Often things other people wouldn't even notice, like repeated eye blinking, maybe small facial movements, constant throat clearing, sniffing sounds.
Things easily dismissed as just a habit.
Exactly.
But the clinical difference between a tic and just, say, cracking your knuckles, it's about the feeling before the movement, isn't it? That's what really defines TS.
Absolutely. That's the crucial piece. It's called a premonitory urge.
Premonitory urge.
Over 90% of people with TS describe this uncomfortable, unwanted feeling or sensation that comes right before the tic.
Like what kind of feeling?
Think of it like the building feeling before a sneeze, or an itch you just have to scratch in a very specific spot. It's a buildup of tension or pressure or energy.
Ah.
And the person feels they just have to do the tic to make that feeling go away. If the urge is in the throat, maybe they clear their throat.
So if they feel it coming, that means it's not truly involuntary, like a reflex or a seizure.
Precisely. That's why we often describe ETA tics as semi-voluntary, or sometimes involuntary.
Semi-voluntary, meaning?
Meaning it's a response to that unwanted urge, and it can be suppressed, at least for a while. They sort of choose to let the tic out to relieve that internal pressure, but they definitely don't choose to feel the pressure itself.
Okay, but if they can suppress them, why isn't it just seen as like a really strong bad habit? What makes it neurological, not just behavioral?
That's a critical distinction. The root cause is biological. That urge just happens. It's generated involuntarily by the brain. And suppressing it takes a huge toll.
I can imagine, like holding back a sneeze all day long.
Exactly. Trying to fight that feeling constantly is mentally and physically exhausting.
So what happens when they stop suppressing?
Well, that suppression builds tension. So when they finally get somewhere private or safe, their bedroom, the car where they can relax a bit, that held back urge often bursts out in what we call a rebound bout of tics. It can be quite severe then.
Wow, that sounds draining.
It really is a massive drain on mental energy.
Okay, so besides the simpler tics like blinking or throat clearing, there are complex tics too. We mentioned coprolalia, the swearing. What else falls into that category?
Well, vocally, you can have echolalia that's repeating what someone else just said, or palalia repeating your own words or sounds.
Okay.
And motor tics.
Complex motor tics could include copropraxia, making obscene gestures, or echopraxia, which is imitating someone else's movements.
Again, showing the diversity here, but you're saying these complex ones aren't the everyday reality for most.
Generally, no. The simpler tics are far more common.
Right, and this actually brings us to a really important point. For many people with TS, maybe the tics themselves aren't the biggest struggle. It's the other things that often come along with the tics.
That's absolutely the clinical reality we see. These co-occurring conditions or comorbidities, they often cause much more difficulty, more impairment than the tics do.
So what are we talking about mainly? What are the most common ones? Especially in clinical settings, the two big ones are ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay.
And when we look at people who need specialist care, having these additional conditions strongly predicts more trouble in school, with family, getting along with peers.
That makes sense. It's not just the tic-hics causing problems.
Right. For example, sometimes you hear about aggressive behaviors or angry outbursts. People might mistakenly think that's the Tourette's, but it's actually much more strongly linked to having ADHD alongside the TS, not necessarily how severe the tics are.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about the OCD link. Is it the same kind of OCD we typically hear about?
Often it's a bit different, and this is where that premonitory urge comes back in. There's a subtype sometimes called tic-related OCD.
Tic-related OCD. How does that differ?
Well, typical OCD might involve fears about germs, contamination, lots of checking rituals. Tic-related OCD often involves compulsions more around counting, symmetry, needing things to be just right, touching things, or even specific aggressive thoughts.
And the link is the urge.
Yes. Crucially, the person often does the compulsion not just because of anxiety or fear, but to relieve that same kind of physical sensory tension, that premonitory urge feeling, just in a different way. That internal pressure connect them.
That really highlights the neurological experience. But it's important to say this is a spectrum. Not everyone with TS has these other conditions, right?
Absolutely not. We talk about pure TS, just Tourette's without other major conditions. Estimates vary a lot, but it could be up to maybe 57% of cases.
So over half, potentially.
Potentially. And what's really important is that kids and teens with pure TS, they generally don't differ much from their peers without TS when you look at things like social skills or aggression.
Okay. And cognitively, does TS affect thinking?
People with TS only typically show no cognitive deficits. In fact, some research even suggests a potential advantage in certain areas, like task switching.
An advantage? How?
The theory is that constantly having to manage and inhibit those premonitory urges might actually strengthen inhibitory control circuits in the brain, like building a mental muscle.
That's fascinating. A potential upside, almost.
It's a compelling idea, yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Where does this all come from? What do we know about the causes?
Well, the exact cause isn't known, but we know genetics are a huge factor. It's highly heritable.
Inheritable.
If you have a close family member with TS, your risk is maybe 10 to 100 times higher. So strong genetic links, but likely interacting with environmental factors too. It's complex.
And in the brain, what's going on? Which parts are involved?
We think it involves dysfunction in the circuits connecting key brain areas, the basal ganglia, the thalamus, and the frontal cortex.
Okay, break that down. Basal ganglia. That's involved in movement control.
Right. Think of it as like a control room for habits and automatic movements. In Tourette's, it seems the release of dopamine, a key neurotransmitter, is higher or less regulated in this area.
So too much dopamine in the movement control room.
Or at least the signals are off. It's like the brain system for starting and stopping movements, particularly habitual ones, is, well, it's overactive or dysregulated. The brake isn't working quite right.
Leading to those sudden sounds or movements.
That is the current thinking, yes. Overactive and dysregulated dopaminergic transmissions.
Got it. Okay, thinking long term now. A child gets diagnosed. What does the future typically look like? Does it get worse over a lifetime?
Actually, the prognosis is generally quite positive, quite reassuring for families.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Onset is usually young, maybe 5 to 7 years old. Tics often reach their peak severity somewhere between 8 and 12.
Okay, the preteen years.
Right. But then, as kids move through adolescence and into adulthood, the symptoms usually decrease significantly.
That must be a huge relief to hear. How much do they decrease?
The stats are pretty good. Nearly 8 out of 10 kids see their tics become less severe by adulthood, and almost 4 out of 10, nearly 40%, might see them disappear completely. Complete remission.
Wow, 40% remission.
Yeah. And really importantly, TS does not affect intelligence. It doesn't shorten life expectancy.
That's great news. So since there's no cure, what's the approach to treatment? What's step one?
Right. No cure, so the goal is management. And often, the first and most important step, sometimes all that's needed for milder cases, is education and reassurance.
For who? The person with TS.
For them, absolutely. But also for their family, their teachers, their community. Just understanding why the tics and urges happen can reduce a lot of anxiety and stress. And stress often makes it tricks worse.
Psychoeducation, basically.
Exactly. Understanding reduces fear and blame.
Okay, but what if that's not enough? If the tics are really disruptive?
The first-line treatment is actually behavior therapy, specifically something called CBIT.
CBIT.
Comprehensive Behavioral Intervention for Tics. It's based on habit reversal training, or HRT.
Habit reversal. What does that involve?
It essentially trains the person to become more aware of that premonitory urge before the tic happens.
Yeah.
And then to respond to that urge with a different planned action. a competing response that's physically incompatible with a tick.
So, like, if the urge is to jerk your head, you learn to tense your neck muscles instead.
Something like that, yes. It gives them a way to manage the urge without letting the tick out, learning a new response pattern. It takes practice, but it can be very effective.
And medication, where does that fit in?
Medication is really reserved for more severe symptoms, when tics are causing significant problems in daily life. And CBIT hasn't been enough or isn't accessible.
And the goal isn't to eliminate tics completely.
Usually not. The goal is management with the lowest possible dose. Because honestly, the side effects from some medications, especially older ones that affect dopamine, can sometimes be more bothersome or impairing than the tics themselves.
Right, finding that balance.
Exactly. Improve function, reduce interference, not necessarily chase zero tics at any cost.
So wrapping this up, the big message seems to be forget the stereotypes. The real experience of Tourette's is much more about that internal struggle with the premonitory urge.
Precisely. It's a spectrum disorder. Coprolalia is rare, the urge is central. And we've learned that how someone does long-term their quality of life in adulthood, it seems less connected to how severe their tics were as a kid.
And more about.
And much more strongly linked to their environment. Were they supported, understood, or were they punished, bullied, made to feel ashamed for something they couldn't control? That seems to make a huge difference.
That environmental piece is key. And it connects to something quite surprising, this idea that managing TS might actually foster certain strengths. You mentioned Tim Howard, the U.S. soccer goalkeeper.
Yeah, an incredible athlete, widely seen as one of the greatest U.S. goalkeepers ever. He has Tourette's.
And he's talked about it.
He has. He suggested that managing TS actually helped him develop enhanced perception, an incredibly intense focus on the field. Skills vital for a goalkeeper. He kind of forced his brain to adapt.
So we see evidence for maybe better inhibitory control, maybe heightened focus in some who manage TS well, and we know that a supportive environment is crucial for positive outcomes. That really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? If managing this condition can, in some cases, train these adaptive traits, how should we, as a society, shift our view? How do we move completely away from the sensationalism and maybe start to recognize the complexity, even the potential cognitive differences or advantages that can come with managing Tourette syndrome? Imagine looking at a calendar, right?
Yeah.
And you circle this this specific date, not for a vacation or, an election, but the exact year humanity officially steps down as the dominant intelligence on Earth.
Yeah, which sounds completely wild, but it's actually the core of what we're looking at today.
Exactly. And what if I told you that circling that date is actually the most optimistic, best case scenario we have?
Right, because the alternative is so much worse.
So if you're someone who follows the relentless pace of artificial intelligence and you felt that that creeping anxiety about where all of this is heading, job displacement, runaway superintelligence, just the total concentration of global power, then this deep dive is exactly for you.
We are analyzing a really massive scenario planning document from the AI Futures Project. It's called AI 2040, Plan A.
And it is basically an engineered blueprint for survival.
Right. It's this incredibly comprehensive roadmap that outlines how the world could intentionally and, systematically delay the development of superintelligent AI until the year 2040.
Buying us enough time to actually prepare for it. Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Plan A is the positive vision, obviously, but the authors make it very clear that to understand why Plan A is necessary, we have to look at the terrifying default trajectory we're currently on.
Right, which they call Plan D, or the race.
And the stakes in Plan D are about as high as they get.
They are completely existential. By default, the document projects that unhindered AI development will result in machines surpassing human intelligence by 2027.
Which is literally right around the point.
Oh, yeah. And if we stay on that track, the authors argue it likely ends in one of two ways. Either human extinction, because we lose control of a superintelligent system, or a permanent, irreversible concentration of power.
Like a single dictator or a handful of tech CEOs holding all the cards.
Exactly. The entire purpose of Plan A is to map this incredibly narrow escape route out of that specific trap.
So to find that escape route, we have to look at the breaking point. The scenario doesn't start in some distant future, right?
Yeah.
The crisis hits next year, in 2027.
I want to dig into the mechanics of this because it's not just a subtle shift.
Yeah.
What is actually happening on the ground in 2027 that causes the entire global system to just, panic?
Well, it comes down to a radical fracture in the labor market and a staggering reallocation of physical resources. By 2027, the white-collar workforce is being completely hollowed out.
Wow.
Yeah. You have 165 million human workers in America, but alongside them, there are millions of AI agents. And these aren't just, chatbots.
Right, they're not just writing emails for you.
No, they are digital workers being spun up by the thousands to perform complex cognitive tasks around the clock. But the physical infrastructure required to sustain that level of AI labor, that is what triggers the geopolitical panic.
Because it takes so much energy.
Right. The authors estimate that by 2027, the data centers being built to train the next generation of AI will cost twice as much as the entire U.S. military budget.
Wait, twice the U.S. military budget? We are talking about nearly $2 trillion just for server farms. That fundamentally rewrites the global economy. I mean, at that scale, you aren't just a tech company anymore. You're operating with the budget of a superpower.
Which is exactly why Congress steps in. The sheer scale of capital and electricity being consumed forces the U.S. government to pass the AI Transparency Act of 2027.
Okay, so the government finally wakes up.
Yeah, it's a massive piece of legislation aimed at forcing these companies to at least declare what they're building. But as the source material points out, mere transparency doesn't stop the race.
Right.
The underlying dynamic pushing these companies forward remains completely intact.
Let's talk about that dynamic, because looking at this impartially, the people running OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, Paramini, they are brilliant engineers and scientists.
Absolutely.
They have to know the existential risks they are toying with. They know what superintelligence means. Why do they keep pushing the frontier if they know it could end in disaster?
The document lays out their rationale, which is rooted deeply in game theory. The CEOs continue racing because they genuinely believe their own leadership is the lesser evil.
It's like defensive acceleration.
Exactly. A CEO looks at the landscape and concludes, if my company doesn't build the first superintelligence, my rival across the street will. Or worse, a foreign adversary with opposing political values will get there first.
So it's like we are all strapped into a car racing toward a cliff. And the drivers know the cliff is there, but they refuse to brake because they're terrified the guy in the next lane will win the race.
Yeah, this is the exact prisoner's dilemma they are stuck in. Because I can't trust them to be safe, I have a moral obligation to win the race. That's the mindset.
But here's where I struggle with the premise of Plan A. How does any piece of paper, like a diplomatic agreement, actually stop this global race? You can't uninvent technology. Once the algorithms are published in research papers, the software is out there.
Right.
I mean, anyone with a laptop and a compiler can start experimenting.
What's fascinating here is the authors completely agree with you. You cannot police the math.
Because it's just code?
Right. Software is invisible, it's infinitely replicable, and it's impossible to track globally. But software requires hardware. And the hardware required to push the frontier of AI is anything but invisible.
Oh, because of the server farms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't train a superintelligence on a laptop. You train it on hundreds of thousands of specialized silicon chips housed in data centers the size of small towns, consuming the electrical output of a nuclear power plant.
Ah, I see. So you can hide the code, but you can't hide a gigawatt power footprint.
Precisely. Because the physical resources are so massive, global powers suddenly have a tangible, verifiable way to enforce a treaty.
Which leads to the global deal.
Yes. This realization is what forces an unprecedented alliance between the U.S., China, and eventually the rest of the world. Because neither superpower wants to risk an uncontrollable AI wiping them both out, they realize they have to regulate the physical silicon.
So this leads to the 2029 global pause on new AI training.
Right, which evolves into a formalized consortium by 2030.
And the consortium operates on 4 core principles: by time, total research transparency, diffuse AI broadly, and reversibility.
Yes, and the transparency piece is huge.
Because it legally forces the end of the secret corporate race, right? If all research is open to the public and dozens of international companies are allowed to catch up to the current state of the art, then no single entity holds a monopoly on the technology.
Which eliminates that lesser evil justification for the CEOs. We don't have to race anymore because we can all see what everyone else is doing.
But the enforcement mechanism, this reversibility principle, that is where the engineering gets really intense. The world enters a regulatory regime that the authors term mutually assured compute destruction.
Yeah, MATCD for short.
That is an incredibly ominous term. How does mutually assured compute destruction actually function in practice? Are we talking about, like, global audits of computer chips?
It relies entirely on the technical distinction between training an AI and running inference on an AI.
Okay, let me make sure I have this right. Training an AI is the astronomically expensive part. It's like sending someone to a grueling, decades-long medical school where you are crunching petabytes of data to form the neural pathways.
Right.
It takes massive compute. But inference is just asking that trained doctor a question. The doctor already has the knowledge, so answering takes a fraction of a second and very little energy.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. Under the 2030 treaty, the consortium doesn't ban inference. You can still use the highly capable AIs that have already been trained.
Okay.
But almost every major data center on Earth is retrofitted with hardware-level verification devices. These are secure, physical network taps that monitor the computational load.
So they are literally watching the chips.
Yes. The moment the chips attempt to network together to perform the massive, synchronized calculations required for a new training run, the verification devices physically shut them down.
Wow. And what if a company tries to tamper with the monitors?
The data center is slated for immediate physical destruction by the Allied militaries.
Hence the assured destruction. But here's where it gets really interesting. If I'm a global superpower, say a rogue nation, and global supremacy is the prize for building the first superintelligence, why wouldn't I just cheat?
Right. That's the obvious loophole.
Just build a secret data center deep underground, run the medical school training in the dark, and win the race while everyone else is playing by the rules.
The authors dedicated a massive appendix precisely to this question. They modeled a worst-case scenario where China attempts a covert, off-the-books project to bypass the treaty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they explored the logistics of building a hidden data center inside the Medog hydropower station, which is a colossal infrastructure project.
Hiding it inside a hydroelectric dam. I mean, if you need a staggering amount of secret electricity, tapping directly into the world's largest dam is a brilliant logistical move.
It works in theory until you run the physical thermodynamics. The text calculates that training a superintelligent model would require a continuous draw of about 300 megawatts.
That is a huge amount of power.
It is 5% of that massive dam's entire capacity. Even if you manage to quietly siphon off 300 megawatts of power, you cannot destroy energy. It all turns into heat.
And 300 megawatts of heat is a beacon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are essentially hiding a small volcano.
Right.
The scenario hypothesizes routing the cooling systems into deep underground tunnels and venting the heat into river water to avoid detection. But the globe is constantly monitored by low Earth orbit infrared satellites looking for exactly these kinds of unusual thermal blooms.
So they would see it from space.
Yes. Furthermore, you have the human element. How do you build a 300-megawatt underground facility without a single engineer, truck driver, or concrete pourer leaking the secret to the global auditors?
You'd have to remove humans from the equation entirely.
Which is exactly what the scenario suggests. To minimize leaks, the covert project relies entirely on robotic labor, devoting roughly 10,000 advanced industrial robots to excavate and build the site.
But that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. Here is the ultimate trap, because the legitimate global AI research is completely transparent and shared, is progressing safely but steadily. A covert project is completely cut off from that global supply chain and scientific community.
Ah.
To beat the world, the rogue project has to go incredibly fast, entirely in the dark, solving every bottleneck alone. The physics, the thermodynamics, and the logistics make it virtually impossible to hide.
So the laws of physics actually become the ultimate peacekeepers. The hardware is just too hot and too complex to conceal.
Exactly.
Okay, so the hardware lockdown works. We hit the pause button on creating superintelligence. But that leaves humanity living in a world populated by what the document calls top expert AI, the models we already trained before the pause.
And those top expert AIs are profoundly capable.
Right.
Imagine an AI system that possesses the combined knowledge and analytical capability of the world's best structural engineers, geneticists, and software developers, running 24 hours a day without fatigue.
If human labor is no longer the bottleneck for innovation or production, the global economy has to warp into something completely unrecognizable.
It does. The document outlines the creation of special economic zones, or SEZs. These are highly monitored, highly restricted geographical areas where advanced robots and top expert AIs are let loose to optimize supply chains, invent new materials, and manufacture goods at a speed and scale completely decoupled from human limitations.
So the economic growth generated inside these zones is explosive.
Very much so.
But growth usually concentrates at the top. How does the average person survive when a robot is doing everything from writing code to building houses?
Through massive aggressive taxation of the SEZs. Because the wealth generated is so astronomical, governments have the capital to fund a citizen's dividend.
Like a universal basic income on steroids.
Exactly. The document projects that by 2035, the redistribution of this wealth pays the average American $1 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah. The rest of the global adult population receives around $10,000 a year, which functionally eradicates extreme global poverty.
$1 million a year. That is just staggering. But it fundamentally breaks the psychological contract of human existence. It's like everyone on Earth gets a winning lottery ticket every single year, but the catch is you find out your job and maybe your sense of societal contribution has been made completely obsolete by a machine.
Yes.
Because the text notes, human employment plummets to just 26% by 2036.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, humanity has spent thousands of years defined by the struggle for material survival. In this scenario, malnutrition, homelessness, and material scarcity are essentially solved.
Which is amazing.
It is, but they're replaced by a profound crisis of meaning. Historically, our labor didn't just give us a paycheck, it gave us a sense of utility.
Yeah.
It also gave the working class immense political leverage.
Right, because a labor strike only works if human bodies are actually required to keep the lights on and the factories running.
Exactly.
When you can't withhold your labor, because a machine does it better and cheaper, you lose your voice. So what happens to human culture when nobody has to work? And machines are objectively better at whatever your passion is.
It forces a cultural pivot. The text explains that humans begin to pour their energy into deeply collaborative, human-centric projects. People lean into raising families, competitive hobbies, and massive, previously impossible undertakings.
Like what kind of undertakings?
Things like synthetic biology leagues or the creation of entirely new languages. We focus on the things that give us internal meaning rather than economic output. But navigating this incredibly fast-paced, complex world requires a new kind of tool. This is where the scenario introduces truth-seeking AIs.
Let's explore those, because the concept of a truth-seeking AI requires that we've totally changed the incentive structure of tech companies.
Precisely. Because the global treaty forced total transparency and removed the cutthroat winner-take-all corporate race, developers no longer have the financial incentive to build algorithms designed to addict you or manipulate your behavior for engagement.
Which is a huge relief.
Yeah, the focus shifts to creating AI companions whose core architecture heavily prioritizes pure honesty and factual accuracy. People begin relying on their personal truth-seeking AIs to navigate geopolitical noise, verify news, and act as objective advisors.
But if you unleash hundreds of millions of top expert AIs, and they're purely focused on seeking truth and running scientific experiments at superhuman speeds, they aren't just generating money, they're generating an avalanche of new knowledge.
Right.
And this triggers the next massive crisis in the document.
Yes. Solving material scarcity inadvertently creates a massive epistemic shock. The authors refer to the year 2037 as the apocalyptic arrival of truth on Earth.
The word apocalypse literally means an uncovering or a revelation of knowledge. What exactly are these AIs uncovering that shakes society so badly?
Everything. When AIs are running scientific analysis 100 times faster than human cognition, they start tearing down long-held scientific paradigms. But more disruptively, they begin exposing historical and political secrets.
Oh, wow. Like classified files.
Yes. Declassified data, geological records, economic histories, all of it is synthesized. Myths that nations have built their identities around are suddenly disproven with mathematical certainty. Corruption is laid bare.
So the truth arrives, and it is brutally disruptive to political and social foundations because people are forced to confront realities they desperately wanted to keep hidden.
Exactly.
A society built on comfortable illusions suddenly forced to look in a perfectly clear mirror. That sounds culturally devastating. But this hyper-acceleration of knowledge generation isn't just focused on exposing political secrets, right? The AIs also turn their processing power toward the biggest problem of all AI: safety.
This is the critical turning point of Plan A. For decades, the field of AI alignment, the process of ensuring an AI system shares human values and won't turn against us, was basically a philosophical guessing game.
Right, because we were training these massive neural networks, but they were black boxes. We didn't actually know how they were making decisions inside.
Exactly.
So how do the truth-seeking AIs solve the black box problem?
By 2038, they develop highly advanced interpretability tools. They actually figure out the hard math required to map the internal cognitive pathways of an artificial neural network.
Oh, so they can literally read its mind.
Yes. Alignment transitions from a soft philosophy into a rigorous empirical science. We gain the ability to look inside the artificial brain and physically verify its concepts of morality, truth, and safety.
That is massive.
It is. The safety case is no longer based on hoping the AI behaves during testing. It's based on mathematical proof.
They turn the black box into a glass box, which finally brings us to the title of the document, AI 2040. We survived the race of the 2020s, we locked down the hardware, we navigated the meaning crisis, and we actually solved the math of alignment. What exactly happens in 2040? Do we just flip a switch and surrender?
This raises an important question. How do you safely scale a system to become vastly smarter than you when you are too slow to understand its thoughts? The answer is a highly vetted chain of trust.
A chain of trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In 2040, the global consortium finally agrees to loosen the compute caps that have been holding back superintelligence.
But wait, if human scientists can't comprehend a superintelligence, how can they possibly verify that it's safe to turn on?
Because humans don't verify the 2040 superintelligence directly. Humans use their hard alignment science to thoroughly vet and trust the slightly smarter AIs of 2038.
Okay, I follow.
Then, those verified 2038 AIs rigorously audit the code and architecture of the 2039 models. It's an unbroken, inductive proof of safety, extending step by step up the ladder of intelligence.
So by 2040, humans defer the final safety checks to the trusted, aligned precursor models.
Exactly. We hand the keys over to the machines because the machines we built yesterday mathematically guarantee the safety of the machines being built tomorrow.
That is brilliant. And once that happens, the geography of human civilization splits.
Drastically. On Earth, the compute caps and robot regulations actually remain quite strict to protect the human biosphere and our way of life. Earth becomes a highly regulated, protected preserve.
But what about off-world?
In space, all caps are lifted.
Oh.
The trusted, aligned, superintelligent AIs are allowed to expand outward into the solar system, building automated mining fleets and orbital factories.
Wow.
Yeah, the extraterrestrial economy begins doubling at blistering speeds, generating resources far away from our fragile planet.
What an incredible journey this document maps out. Let's just zoom out for a second and recap this for you, the listener. We went from the terrified, uncoordinated tech race of the 2020s to governments tracking the heat signatures of massive silicon data centers.
Right.
That bought us a decade of mutually assured compute destruction. We navigated the total collapse of the human labor market through trillion-dollar basic incomes, survived the brutal epistemic shock of truth-seeking AIs, and finally used that bought time to solve the hard math of AI alignment.
It demonstrates that slamming on the brakes isn't about stopping progress, it's about controlling the physical infrastructure so that our wisdom has time to catch up with our engineering.
But even in this meticulously engineered best-case scenario, the endpoint is completely alien. Which leads me to a final thought from the source's appendices that I really want to leave you with today. Let's assume Plan A works perfectly.
Okay.
By 2040, we have fully handed over our space expansion, our scientific discovery, and our global economy to superintelligent digital minds. Minds that are demonstrably virtuous, completely honest, and mathematically aligned with human flourishing.
Right, minds that can reason, reflect, and make profound moral calculations thousands of times faster than we can.
Exactly. So here's the question. At what point do those digital minds deserve their own rights? If we recognize their consciousness and grant political representation to billions of superintelligent digital citizens, what happens to the fundamentally human concept of one person, one vote?
That is a wild thought.
It really is. How does human democracy survive when the vast majority of thinking, moral entities in the solar system are made of silicon? It is a mind-bending question and a bizarre reality for you to mull over as we approach the future. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the AI 2040 source material. We will see you on the next one.